I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. We're kicking off the show tonight with the type of story you're only going to find right here. We're going to spend time digging into your questions on shoplifting in Multnomah County. Now, I know it may sound like it's a petty crime, a small crime, but it's sure not petty to the people who get ripped off. And as viewer Ann pointed out, the so-called petty crimes chip away at the fabric of our formerly safe community. And that's why this not so small crime is tonight's big story. Now, when I tell you our reports are unlike any others that you'll find on local news in Oregon 5 nights a week, maybe in the country now that I think about it, I'm not kidding. No one is spending the kind of time we are unpacking stories that affect all of our lives. You, me, the community, everyone. Take that petty crime of shoplifting. Last night, our Kyle Abosha revealed that when it comes to misdemeanor theft in Washington County, they prosecute 93%. And in Clackamas County, they prosecute 84% of the cases that police bring to them. And in Multnomah County, they prosecute just 46%. Why is that number so low? Well, District Attorney Mike Schmidt told Kyle that his office will only prosecute the cases they're confident that they can win, which seemed like a really reasonable explanation to me, until I started asking around. You know what? That is the exact same standard all district attorneys have, including Washington County's Kevin Barton, who saw our story on those different rates of prosecution.
I didn't realize there was such a difference until I saw your story, in fact. And so that's really just what we've always done out in Washington County. It's our approach really for all crimes. We take a look at the evidence that's available to us. And like any prosecutor's office anywhere in the nation, we review the evidence. And if there's sufficient evidence to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, we'll move forward on that case. That's always been our approach with every level of crime, all the way from misdemeanor theft up to murder.
Huh. So if everyone is using the same standard to decide whether to prosecute a crime, is there something else going on? Multnomah County's district attorney said the cases that get dismissed from his office don't have enough evidence, things like video and reports from loss prevention folks. Some viewers like Bob are not buying that.
Tell that district attorney to prosecute. Failure to do so makes me embarrassed to live in Multnomah County.
All right, Bob. Many of you were struck by the difference in prosecution rates as well among the 3 counties. And many of you are like Shelley, who wondered why.
I live in Multnomah County. Anyway, I'm trying to understand why so many more are prosecuted in the other counties. If the people are reporting them a lot more, and if so, why? There must be a...
Well, Martha wondered that same question, asking, my question is how Clackamas and Washington counties are able to bring so many more cases to trial than Multnomah. Are they better at gathering the evidence? Do they have better police force and more people who are willing to press charges? I get that Schmidt doesn't want to press a case he can't win, but this is nuts. Well, Martha and Shelley and everyone else who asked that question, I hear you. That's why I passed along your questions to the district attorneys of Clackamas and Washington counties. Remember, their offices prosecute far more of these petty crime cases like shoplifting than Multnomah County does. So why is that? Well, let's start with Clackamas County's DA, John Wentworth.
While I know some folks delineate between low level and high level, we don't take that into consideration. So much of what makes a community safe is ensuring that when even misdemeanor crimes are committed, that we make sure that those matter. If there is a movement or a thought of having misdemeanors not prosecutable or not investigated by the police, that impacts livability for everyone and sends the message that even the commission of higher crimes is going to be accepted. And we don't do that in Clackamas County.
In Clackamas County, DA Wentworth's office prosecutes, remember, 84% of the petty theft cases or misdemeanor crimes that are brought to them by police. Now, when I asked the DA in Washington County, where 93% of those crimes are prosecuted, he suggested there might be a difference in philosophy.
Well, I can't speak for what's wrong in Multnomah County, and clearly something is wrong there. What I can say is we all apply the same laws. The same criminal laws apply everywhere in Oregon. The same rules of evidence in court apply everywhere in Oregon. And what you have sometimes is a difference in philosophy with the leaders in various communities. And I can only speak for my community, and I can say that the police chiefs, the sheriff, and myself, we all prioritize accountability. We also prioritize making sure that we enforce what I call quality of life crimes. If you are a business owner and you're a victim of shoplifting, that's a significant issue that you're dealing with. If you are a regular person on the street and your catalytic converter has been stolen or your car has been broken into, that's a significant issue to you.
It is significant to a lot of you viewers as well. It's gotten to the point where folks like Patrick, he's a viewer from the Columbia River Gorge, his wife was trapped in Nordstrom during a smash and grab. Well, people like him are now brainstorming ways that stores can protect themselves and their customers.
I just think if some of the small business owners did it where the person came in and then you lock the door. They don't get out until you let them out. They can't do a smash and grab. The big stores, that's probably impossible, although they could still. Nordstrom has guys standing at some of the doors. Why don't they let you in, but you got to be let out? It seems like a fix to me, and, we got to get these guys. This is horrible. Portland now has a whole culture of shoplifters.
And by the way, word is out that Clackamas and Washington counties are bad places to commit shoplifting and other low-level crimes because the cops in the DA's office, they come after you. Kyla Boshi's story last night had two remarkable moments where suspects caught for minor crimes were reacting to the fact that they were not in Multnomah County. Check this out.
This is an actual recording of a phone call between a woman being held in the Washington County jail on theft charges and her boyfriend.
Do you want cited or what?
Well, I mean, if it was in Multnomah County, like, you would have got released already. It's up.
I know. It's because it's Washington County.
And when this suspect, arrested on theft charges, realized he was in neighboring Clackamas County.
Where are we going?
Clackamas County Jail. You ever been there?
What?
You ever been to Clackamas County Jail?
No.
Well,
I was at, man, where's the line
there.
for Clackamas? Oh, man.
I know, he screwed up.
I asked both district attorneys about those clips. Actually, they're kind of proud that the suspects and other criminals know it's best to stay out of their counties.
Of course, I have a certain amount of pride in knowing that among those who would otherwise decide to come into Clackamas County and commit crime, that they know that they're not welcome and that we are going to hold them accountable and that we're going to pursue the case as vigorously as we can. And so I hope that provides some assurance and some comfort to the people who live, work, and play in Clackamas County, that at least people who would otherwise come to harm them in some way, including steal their belongings, steal their property, that those folks just aren't welcome and that behavior won't be tolerated.
I also asked the DAs about giving people a break because many involved in these petty thefts are likely doing it to feed drug habits, or maybe they're struggling with mental health issues. Here's Kevin Barton from Washington County.
When people make the voluntary decision to commit a crime, to engage in a criminal act, they should be held accountable for that. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't take into account other factors that may be present. And oftentimes these days, addiction and mental health issues are clearly present. And so we have an abundance of specialty and treatment courts in Washington County that really make a huge effort to try and address the root cause of crime. But at the end of the day, if someone makes the decision to go out and commit a crime, whether they're doing it because they are greedy, or they're doing it because they're feeding a drug habit, or they're doing it for some other reason, we believe that accountability is a key factor, and that starts with prosecuting them for the crime they've chosen to commit.
Now, to be fair, a few emails did come in that were supportive of the Multnomah County District Attorney. They wanted to know what the conviction rate is on all three counties. The thought being, well, if Multnomah County is being more picky on the cases they take, maybe they're getting a bunch more convictions than the other guys. Well, I asked all three DA's offices for that information, and Washington County was the only one that got back to me. They just sent their numbers in within the last hour, and they report that they get convictions in 92% of their theft cases. Multnomah and Clackamas County have still not shared their numbers yet. Although I might point out that the criminals seem to be telling us who's most effective at prosecuting them by the places they're staying away from. And we did get one voicemail from a viewer named Joe who supports the Multnomah County DA's low prosecution numbers for these low-level crimes.
I personally believe that being more aggressive on prosecuting is really not going to help the community, because obviously when somebody has a criminal record, they can't get a house, can't get a job. I personally believe what they should be doing is prosecuting, and then after they serve their sentence, they shouldn't have to deal with that charge on the record anymore, because obviously, like what I said before, I personally believe what the DA in Multnomah County is doing is the right thing. I personally believe it's on the retailers to prevent theft.
All right, and finally, here's my opinion on all this. When Mike Schmidt was elected district attorney in Multnomah County, he had a ton of support. Lots of voters cast ballots for him, including me. He arrived at the office with a progressive vision of reforming law and order in Multnomah County. His campaign material pointed out that 2/3 of the cases prosecuted by the office are misdemeanors, and that he would change the focus to violent crimes and look for ways to handle low-level cases through alternative avenues. And now we see how that's playing out. He's only prosecuting 46% of the low-level cases like shoplifting that are brought to him by police. And shoplifting is everywhere. The crooks prefer Multnomah County to the other two. And let's remember what we're talking about here. We're not talking about all of the shoplifting cases that happen in Multnomah County and only prosecuting 46% of that. No, we're talking about all the cases that police think are good cases that they can take to the district attorney's office. Of those cases, only 46% are being prosecuted. In my opinion, it's time to end this experiment of ignoring those low-level cases. They are not going away. They seem to be flourishing. Washington and Clackamas County, those DAs know how to go after those crimes. Perhaps Mike Schmidt should ask them for advice, because the path he's on right now is not leading our county to a safer or a better future. Well, that's my opinion anyway. You don't have to agree with me, but you do have to communicate. Am I full of it? I could be. Or am I right on? I hope I am. Send me an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Now let's turn to politics. After one of the closest and most interesting congressional races in quite some time, we got a chance to sit down recently with Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez, the projected winner of Washington's 3rd District. It took 5 days for the winner to be projected in the race. Democrat Gluesenkamp-Perez is in, Republican Joe Kent out. Gluesenkamp-Perez flew out to D.C. for orientation just hours after she was projected to win. Well, we wanted to know what new member orientation is like for Congress. You know, the people who help create the federal laws for the rest of us. Evan Watson has the story.
We know it can take days for decisive election results in close races. For candidates who are waiting on that call, they might only have a few hours before they're on a plane to D.C. for new congressional member orientation.
I mean, it's very surreal. And I would say, I haven't been to Washington, D.C. since 9th grade. And so going and really just the stark contrast between our district and our values in Southwest Washington and comparing it to the world of DC, it really, really makes me value and feel much more protective over our interest in Southwest Washington.
What contrast is that between here and DC?
They don't have any trees there.
Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez says it's a whirlwind transition for someone new to Congress.
A lot of budgeting, a lot of logistics, a lot of security.
She spent last week in D.C. figuring out staffing and her office infrastructure. She also took classes on House ethics rules and learned how various committees work in between frequent phone calls. Now she's back for Thanksgiving, and then she'll return to D.C. next week for round 2.
What were your expectations going into that first week, and then what ended up happening?
I have to say I did expect a little bit more integration between the Republican and Democratic side, but there are classes that we are separate. We have separate events. I think that's not ideal. I think it's critical that we make allies across the aisle early, figure out who shares similar values to me. So I am making more of an effort to talk to other Republican electeds.
In her campaign, Gluesenkamp-Perez marketed herself as a moderate candidate who wants to find the political middle ground. Across the country, More moderate candidates from both the Republican and Democratic parties performed well in the November midterms. Gluesenkamp-Perez and political analysts say they view the results as a mandate from voters to find consensus.
My hope is that I'm part of sort of a new generation of people in DC who really are looking for bipartisanship, who really are looking to make friends with people of all political persuasions and delivering on the things that, there's just so much stuff that we all agree is broken, and so my hope is that we can, right now at the start, before some of these political affiliations get cemented in, make relationships that we can lean on to get bills passed.
Do you feel like there's a sense of that in this freshman class of 43?
I think so. It is so tightly scheduled. It's hard to find those times, to have short conversations during breaks. But what I'm seeing, I've talked to plenty of Republicans who are excited about the issues I'm excited about.
She mentions right to repair laws as an example. You should be able to fix your car or your phone. But first, she and the other new members of Congress have to get ready to govern.
What committees have availability? What is the schedule going to look like? How is your life going to come together? There's a lot of those questions for all of us.
And where's my role in all of this?
Right. What rooms need my perspective more than others? How can I find a strategic advantage for my district and the needs of my district, navigating all of this? Yeah.
That was Evan Watson reporting. And by the way, we should tell you, votes are still being counted in this race between Gluesenkamp-Perez and Republican Joe Kent. Right now, she leads Kent by about 2,800 votes, plus some voters still have time to fix any ballot mistakes. If her lead shrinks, and by the way, it's crazy that we're still counting. That's why she's still just the projected winner, not the official winner. If her lead shrinks to within half a percentage point, or about 1,600 votes, that would trigger an automatic recount in Washington. But there are very few votes left to count at this stage, and it's worth noting that recounts rarely change any election results. County election officials use audits as the process moves along to make sure the results are 100% accurate. And organizations like the Associated Press have projected Gluesenkamp-Perez to win the district, and we now, by the way, it should be done in more than a week from now. All right. Struggled to get that out. Let's take a look at a viewer comment that's come in during our show so far about our shoplifting piece. Rob says, the Multnomah DA has made a mockery of the criminal justice system. He's one of the biggest reasons that crime is out of control. Enforcing livability crimes is absolutely essential to reducing all crime in our community. As a law enforcement veteran of 30 years, it is a slap in the face for him to say he doesn't have simple evidence needed. I know for a fact that officers are collecting and submitting proper evidence. Thanks for your comment, Rob, and for your input, and for all of you who are sending emails. We appreciate that. Still ahead on the story, nobody is surprised a lawsuit is filed against Measure 114, that's Oregon's new gun law. But how likely is it to survive a legal challenge? Why a constitutional law expert says one part of the law could be in real trouble. When the story returns. Oregon voters passed Measure 114 2 weeks ago today, and almost immediately our inbox here at The Story was flooded with questions and concerns. And we're doing our best to try and answer as many questions as we can for you, and please do keep them coming. Send them to thestory@kgw.com. Already in the last 2 weeks, two things have happened that were not hard to predict. The first was that sheriffs of several rural counties have come out and said, no, they're not going to be enforcing parts of the law. The second thing that we figured was highly likely is that a lawsuit would be filed over the law claiming that it violates the Second Amendment. And that happened on Friday. Now, there are some things that are harder to predict, like how likely is it that the lawsuit will be successful in stopping the law from going into effect? Now, for that, we had to turn to the experts. We spoke with Professor Norman Williams at Willamette University. He's a constitutional law professor. Studying whether a law violates the Constitution is a big part of his job. We wanted to know what the courts will be examining when they consider whether Measure 114 holds up against the Second Amendment.
I think the permit requirement will be upheld by the federal courts, but the ban on high-capacity magazines, I think, will be struck down. The ban on high-capacity magazines was modeled after the California and Washington measures, both of which have been challenged, and the California one has been the source of litigation for a number of years.
We have a big segment planned on Measure 114 tomorrow night. We hope that you'll tune in and watch. You'll hear more from Professor Williams on the legal challenges facing 114, how the Supreme Court is examining gun regulation cases. It all goes back, by the way, to the year 1791, when the Second Amendment was first adopted. We're also going to be talking about some of the cultural differences throughout Oregon when it comes to guns. You know that they exist, from Portland, where gun violence is hitting record level, to rural areas where guns are sometimes seen more like tools. And as part of that, we'll hear from the Oregon Hunters Association. We hope that you'll send more of your questions and comments to us before then. Remember, it's thestory@kgw.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this. The KGW Great Toy Drive is underway, and we want to make it easy for you to give. Head to kgw.com/toy and click Donate Cash. If you make a donation online, we'll even shop for you. And get this, if you give this week, local Toyota dealers will double your donation amounts for double the amount of toys. Or you can buy one yourself and drop it off at new Unwrapped Toy Please at any IQ Credit Union, Fred Meyer, or local Toyota dealer. Help bring a little joy to local kids this holiday season. And before we go, Portland's tree lighting ceremony is happening at Pioneer Courthouse Square this Friday. Our own Brittany Falkers is going to MC, and Pink Martini will bring the music. It starts at 5:30. It's free, and they're even handing out gift cards to several local shops, so you want to be there. If you can't get there, though, you can watch it live on KGW.com. Also, a programming note for you, we will not have the story on Thanksgiving or Friday of this week, but on Friday, be sure to tune in at 6 p.m. for live coverage of that tree lighting ceremony. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. We're going to wrap things up right after this. Before we go, let's take a look at a couple of viewer comments that have come in during the show about our shoplifting piece. A different Rob from the one we featured earlier said, "I'm a 70-year-old bleeding heart liberal, but I have no sympathy for criminals. The Multnomah County DA needs to step up and start prosecuting these people and fix Portland's reputation as soft on crime." And how about this one from Steve? "As a Tigard resident, I say good on Kevin Barton for standing up and enforcing the idea that Washington County isn't open to shoplifting and theft. Throw the book at him. We need zero tolerance to set the standard." Strong comments. Well, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW